Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. What if I told you the moment she starts drifting away, it's already too late, and the signs were there long before your heart caught up? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal might sting, but it will protect you. And before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe and like this video. Not for me, but for the version of you that refuses to be blindsided again. There's a painful truth most men never hear until it's too late. Cheating rarely begins with a moment. It begins with a shift. A subtle emotional withdrawal that's almost invisible unless you know exactly what to look for. And that's where you've been vulnerable, not because you're weak, but because no one ever taught you how to read these patterns. You see, when a woman is emotionally invested in you, her behavior has consistency. There's warmth, responsiveness, presence. But when something changes internally, when her attention begins to move elsewhere, her behavior starts to fracture. Not dramatically, but just enough to create confusion. And confusion is dangerous, because it makes you question yourself instead of questioning the situation. The first sign isn't obvious distance, it's unpredictable closeness. One day she's deeply engaged, affectionate, almost like nothing has changed. The next, she's cold, distracted, unreachable. This inconsistency isn't random, it's psychological balancing. She's managing two emotional worlds, and you're only seeing fragments of one. And here's what hurts the most. You'll try to fix it. You'll think maybe she's stressed, maybe she needs space, maybe you did something wrong. So you become more patient, more understanding, more available. But in doing that, you unknowingly train her to give you less while you give more. This is how the dynamic quietly flips. You start chasing clarity, while she starts controlling access. And the more you seek reassurance, the less she feels the need to offer it. I need you to understand something clearly. This isn't about blaming women. It's about recognizing behavior patterns so you don't lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who's already letting go. Because the man who sees the signs early doesn't beg for answers. He observes, he adjusts, and most importantly, he protects his emotional ground. And right now, you're starting to see what most men ignore until it breaks them. There's another shift that happens. Quieter, more dangerous, and far more revealing than anything she says out loud. It's not in her words, it's in her priorities. Because when a woman is truly invested in you, you don't have to fight for space in her life. You naturally exist in it. But when her focus begins to move elsewhere, you start to feel like you're being slowly edited out of her world. At first, it's subtle. She becomes busy more often. Not just physically, but emotionally unavailable in moments where she used to be present. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly now feel forced, shorter, almost like she's mentally somewhere else. And you feel it. That quiet disconnection that no one else can see, but you can't ignore. This is the second sign. She starts protecting her time and attention in ways she never did before. And here's the key. It's selective. She's not unavailable to everyone, just to you. You might notice she's suddenly more engaged on her phone, but less engaged with you. She'll respond slower, seem distracted, or give you surface-level attention while her mind is clearly elsewhere. And when you ask about it, the answers are always just reasonable enough to make you doubt your instincts. I'm just tired. I've been stressed. It's nothing, you're overthinking. And that's where the trap closes, because you want to believe her. Not because it makes sense, but because the alternative hurts more than confusion ever could. But listen carefully. When someone values you, they don't create emotional distance and then dismiss your awareness of it. They lean in, not away. They reassure, not deflect. What's really happening here is a quiet shift of investment. Her emotional energy is being redirected, and you're left trying to maintain a connection that she's no longer fully feeding. And the more you try to hold on to it, the more unbalanced it becomes. You initiate more, you check in more, you try to recreate what used to feel natural. But relationships don't survive on one person's effort, they collapse under it. This is the moment where most men lose themselves, not because they're not enough, but because they refuse to accept what the behavior is clearly showing them. And I need you to remember this. Attention is never accidental. Where it goes consistently, that's where the truth lives. So if her attention is no longer with you, You don't need more explanations. You need awareness. There's a point where the shift stops being subtle and starts becoming defensive. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your awareness is getting too close to something she doesn't want exposed. And this is where most men get emotionally trapped, because what you're about to face won't feel like distance anymore. It will feel like resistance. This is the third sign. She becomes unusually defensive over small, reasonable questions. Not explosive all the time, but sharp enough to make you hesitate the next time you want clarity. And that hesitation is exactly what changes the power dynamic. You'll ask something simple: where she's been, why she seems distant, why her behavior has changed. And instead of calm reassurance, you get irritation, or worse, a reversal. Suddenly, you're the problem. You're too insecure, too controlling, or overthinking everything. Pay attention to that shift, because when someone is innocent and emotionally present, they don't fear transparency. They don't punish you for seeking connection. But when there's something to hide, even harmless questions start to feel like threats. And here's where it becomes psychological. Instead of addressing your concern, she redirects the focus onto your reaction. Now you're defending yourself instead of understanding her behavior. You go from asking questions to questioning yourself. This is not random. It's a defense mechanism that protects distance while keeping you emotionally invested. Because as long as you're busy proving you're not the problem, you stop noticing what actually is. And the emotional cost of this is heavy. You begin to shrink. You second-guess your instincts. You silence your concerns just to avoid conflict. And in doing so, you slowly disconnect from your own clarity. But I need you to hear this clearly. Your awareness is not your weakness. It's your strongest protection. The moment you feel like you have to walk on eggshells just to maintain peace, that peace is already broken. Healthy connection doesn't require you to suppress your instincts. It allows space for honesty without punishment. So if every honest question turns into tension, if every concern turns into your fault, then you're not dealing with communication. You're dealing with avoidance. And avoidance always hides something deeper. The question is, are you willing to see it before it costs you more than just confusion? And then comes the shift that most men feel, but struggle to accept, because it forces a truth they're not ready to face. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet, almost cold, like something that once felt alive is slowly losing its pulse. This is the fourth sign. Her emotional intimacy with you begins to fade, while her independence suddenly intensifies. And on the surface, that might look healthy. Space, individuality, freedom, those are all normal in a balanced relationship. But this isn't balance. This is detachment disguised as independence. You'll notice she stops sharing the small things, the details of her day, her thoughts, her random emotions, the things that made you feel included in her world. Conversations become transactional, functional, almost like you're speaking to someone who knows you, but no longer feels you. And at the same time, she becomes more protective of her privacy. Her phone, her schedule, her plans, things that were once open now feel guarded. Not necessarily secretive in an obvious way, but just enough to create a barrier you can't cross anymore. And this is where it hits you. You're no longer her emotional home. You're just someone in her environment. So what do most men do here? They try to reconnect. They try to remind her of what they had. More effort, more attention, more emotional availability. But here's the painful truth. You cannot revive connection with someone who is emotionally investing elsewhere. Because connection isn't built on effort alone, it's built on mutual presence. And when that presence disappears, effort starts to feel like pressure instead of love. And deep down, you feel it. That quiet instinct telling you something isn't right. But instead of trusting it, you negotiate with it. You tell yourself, maybe it's temporary. Maybe it will pass. Maybe if you just hold on a little longer, things will go back to how they were. But they don't. Because people don't accidentally disconnect. They shift their energy with intention, even if they never say it out loud. So I need you to understand something most men learn too late. When emotional intimacy fades without explanation, it's not confusion, it's a message. And the longer you ignore it, the more you lose yourself trying to hold on to something that's already gone. And now you're standing at the edge of a realization most men spend years avoiding. Not because they're blind, but because they're hoping the truth will somehow change if they wait long enough. But it won't. Because the final shift isn't in her behavior anymore, it's in your awareness. You've seen the inconsistency, you've felt the distance, you've experienced the defensiveness, you've watched the emotional connection fade, and now the only question left is, what are you going to do with that clarity? Because this is where men separate into two paths. The first path is denial. You stay, you overanalyze, you look for explanations that make the situation less painful. You convince yourself that love means patience, that loyalty means endurance, that if you just hold on a little tighter, she'll come back. But what you're really doing is abandoning yourself to keep someone else, and the cost of that is quiet, but devastating. Your confidence erodes, your standards drop, your sense of self becomes dependent on someone who is no longer choosing you fully. The second path is awareness. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. You stop chasing answers and start observing actions. You stop asking for reassurance and start respecting what the behavior is already telling you. Because here's the truth most people won't say out loud. When someone shows you consistent patterns of disconnection, you don't need a confession to validate your experience. You need the courage to respond to reality instead of potential. And that doesn't mean you assume the worst about every situation. It means you stop ignoring what's directly in front of you. You stop negotiating with behavior that makes you feel uncertain, unwanted, or emotionally drained. A strong man doesn't control others, he controls what he tolerates. So if you recognize these signs, don't panic, don't react emotionally, step back, reclaim your focus, rebuild your center. Because the moment you stop chasing clarity from someone else, you start becoming clear to yourself. And that's where your power returns. Not in forcing someone to stay, but in knowing you'll be just fine if they don't. Because the right connection will never require you to ignore your instincts just to keep it alive. And once you truly understand that, you'll never settle for confusion again.